We welcome you back to another episode of Inside Boxing Live, presented by PPV.com. I am Dan Canobio. He is Mr. Worldwide. Are we giving up where you are, Chris Algieri, the 140-pound champion of the world and one half of Inside Boxing Live?
No, I'm all about Europe, but people have been throwing in their little nuggets. Oh, that's this place. That's that place. I kind of enjoy that. So just Europe right now.
Someone on our loyal listener fan base, the IBL faithful, was like, I can't say where Chris is, and then on YouTube they just doxed you. They know exactly where you were, so they're following along, and they're like using the breadcrumbs, and they're just like, all right, Chris is on vacation in Europe. He's living his best life. If anyone deserves a vacation, it's Chris Algieri. Can you tell our loyal listener fan base your schedule for the next couple of days, because it's absolutely batshit crazy?
Yeah. So flying back to the States tomorrow. And I'm sorry, what is tomorrow? On Wednesday morning. And then right to DC to call fights for Pro Box TV. We have our first championship fight on Friday night. Got fighter meetings, weigh-ins Thursday, Friday. And then immediately in the morning, Saturday morning, flying to Miami to call the ESPN Teofimo telecast. Our guy, Tim Bradley, is not available. He's on a family vacation. So they asked if I could step in. I said, sure. So a lot of work, bookending my vacation with a lot of work. I had work before, work after, but such is life.
That's what Chris
This is why I don't vacation. This is why I don't vacation. I don't have time.
Well, I'm grabbing you from your vacation to record this show. I know you're doing stuff for Pro Box. You know, you brought your mic. That's crazy. So from here, you'll go do Pro Box has a championship card with Lamont Roach, world champion. Yep. That's pretty cool. They're leaving the Plant City bubble and they're taking the show on the road. That's Thursday night?
Friday night. Good God.
Yeah. And then right to DC. That's a big deal, bro. You're going to be sitting there next to our guy, Joe Tess. Yeah. You're going to be sitting there on ESPN. Will they do a stand? Will you be on camera? Because sometimes they go right into the fights. We need to see you on camera.
I don't know. I don't know what the plan is. We'll see. When it comes together that night. I think a lot of those decisions kind of come up as the week progresses. So figured I got a meeting today. We got meetings tomorrow. So
it's big. Teofimo Lopez in action this week. It's a busy Saturday night of fights between Teofimo and Claggett. There was also a really nice ESPN card, but, they load up that card. And then we also have Bam versus Estrada on Saturday night over on DAZN. Nice. So this past weekend, it was a little light. We just had ESPN. We had our guy, Rafael Espinoza, who did the damn thing. We'll talk about that in a little bit. That guy's a freaking buzzsaw. It was pretty light this past weekend. So if you were out, hanging out, going to the beach, it was hot as hell. It's hot as hell everywhere. How warm is it where you're at?
It's hot. It's it's not quite as hot as South Florida is right now, or even New York. New York's hotter than Florida at this point, from what I'm hearing.
Bro,
it's
bad.
It's crazy. But yeah, no, it's been hot here, but the days here are super long, so it's like, the sun's up at 6 and it doesn't go down until 10. So it's just like nuts. Full day of sun.
Getting your money's worth.
And walk around. So I got my tan going. I'm looking a little.
That's perfect tan olive. Perfect tan for ESPN.
There you go. Exactly.
What are you going? You going 3-piece suit?
I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, it's Miami, so I might have to
linen.
Step it up a notch. A little white linen.
White,
if possible.
Yes.
Might go full white linen. Throwback to the '80s Miami Vice style. A little Don Johnson action. I don't know. We'll see. I got
roll up the sleeves. If you show up Miami Vice, they cut to you. And our third member of the broadcast tonight, he's joining us. You know him from blah blah blah, and it's you, and you're just like got the sleeves legit rolled up, and you're wearing a yellow undershirt,
boxy square shirt, pastel colored low neck.
Do it.
I might have to do that.
That would be freaking hilarious.
I would have to run that past the execs. I know that this is ESPN Disney World. I gotta. Yeah,
this is a big one. I think it's a big one. I think Teofimo, it's going to be a lot of eyes on that fight. It's regular ESPN. This guy Claggett, I'm looking at his numbers, and on Thursday we'll have a full preview episode. But just to touch on it a little bit, this dude landed 500 punches in a fight once. 500. That's like rarefied air. There's the 300 club, which is rarefied air. There's the 400 club, which is like hitting 600 home runs in baseball. And then there's the 500 club, which is just like you don't ever get to that level of landing punches in a fight. But he's
That's like
just a brawler.
That's Chocolatito numbers right there. Which
Insane.
fight was that for Claggett?
I don't know exactly which one.
That's crazy.
I gotta pull it up. I haven't. That's Thursday's ep. Like I haven't fully got into that, but the guy's gonna stand there and he's going to trade, and he's tailor made for Teofimo. It's gonna be really, really tough. That's Saturday night. Then we got Bam and Estrada, which I feel like got a little bit lost in all of like the Ryan Garcia stuff. Got lost in a little bit of like some of these big fights that we've been getting on the boxing schedule. But it's time to lock into that one because I just don't see how that fight doesn't deliver on Saturday night over on DAZN. I think it's in Arizona. That's an awesome one. Also, haven't got your thoughts on, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I feel like it's just been beat to death. Ryan Garcia suspended for 1 year. There's a lot of stuff swirling out there. I wouldn't say to Haney's defense, but I put out a clip that, made the rounds on social media just about like, why is Devin Haney the butt of these jokes? Like, why do some guys get a pass for PEDs? Why do some guys who get like a Cotto who lost to Margarito and was potentially heavy hands of Margarito, why is Cotto looked at as like a victim and like a sympathetic figure and people rallying around him, but not Haney? It was a genuine question. Like I wanted to learn from the fans, and I got a freaking earful about why people hate Devin Haney. But first, your initial reaction to Ryan Garcia being suspended for a year.
I mean, not really surprised at all. We've been talking about this ad nauseum on our show in terms of what was going to happen down the line. There was going to be some form of suspension. There was going to be a fine. There was going to be obviously the tainted legacy aspect of it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like Ryan cares. And that's kind of how he approaches everything. He's just like, it is what it is. I'll deal with it. He forfeited the 1.1 million plus the 600, so he's at like 2 million. He made like 20 for the fight on the back end, guys. That's what you got to understand. When you talk about him forfeiting, millions of dollars, these fights, guys like this, guys who are as popular as Ryan and Devin and Tank are and Canelo, they make their money on the pay-per-view points. That's after the fact. So giving up your purse, your guaranteed purse, is usually pretty small, and that's that goes back to Golden Boy, which makes sense. That's who was paying him that side, and the pay-per-view numbers is different. That's what you bring in. But yeah, in terms of how Ryan's going about this, it's nothing new. He's being a wild man. I saw a video of him playing poker, slamming drinks, eating food at the table, looking like he was annoying a lot of people.
Jimmy Butler. Did you see him do stand-up comedy?
I saw him do stand-up with Chris D'Elia, which is another canceled guy. It's pretty funny that that's who he teams up with. But I saw that too. Shadowboxing on the stage because he didn't really have much else to say or do.
He forgot his line, so he started shadowboxing.
Yeah. But I didn't really think about that. You're right. I mean, there's a lot of heat coming at Devin. And it seems like he's the big loser in the situation. Yeah, he took a beating. Yes, he lost, but now it's getting expunged. Doesn't matter. He still took that beating that night. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the fans are behind him. But to their credit, Team Haney is going all guns blazing at this situation, getting the fight, getting the loss expunged, looking to file for damages in a legal court battle, which honestly they might win because the market value of Devin Haney is now tainted by a guy who,
I'll say this, Chris. I'll say this: as much as Haney, his market value is he says it's damaged, and that's for him to use in court or whatever. I don't think he's going to go to court. I don't think he's going to do all that. I think he has got the loss expunged. I mean, that really doesn't happen that often in the history of boxing.
No, that's big.
But he tweeted something like, the more hate I get, the bigger I get, which is so true. Like, he's not at the level of Floyd.
He's entering his Money Mayweather era.
Yes, exactly. But he's not as good as Floyd.
Yeah, no.
Right. He's not as good as Floyd, obviously, because we saw with our own eyes what happened to him April 20th. And I do believe that PEDs and a guy coming in overweight, I want to get your thoughts on that too. But the bigger he gets, or the more hate he gets, the bigger he's going to be. When he decides to step back into that ring, whether it's in 6 months, a year from now, he says a year, whenever it is, he is no doubt one of the most hated fighters in boxing today, and you can use that to your advantage in boxing. It's just tried and true. It works.
Can Dan, but the proof is in the pudding. We saw what happened with his this fight coming up with Sandro Martin, excuse me. You know, they did the purse bid. Nobody wanted it. There was only one bid, and it was a low number for what he's used to doing. It was like a $2 million bid for, you know, a world title fight with Devin Haney returning. So that shows you that his market value has been affected. And you're absolutely right. Down the line, it's not going to matter. But immediately, that proof is there, and I'm pretty sure, I would imagine that would be their big use in that lawsuit if they do go in with that court-wise. What they're going to say is like, look what happened. This is a number that this kid has been blowing out for the past couple of years, based on what I think he said he hasn't made that low of an earning, 1.7 million, since his first couple fights with Matchroom. So that was a while ago. So he's been making big money since then, and now coming off this quote unquote loss, he took a big pay cut. So I understand where they're coming from a little more as I learn more and more details about this. But yeah, that's a good point that you thought about. Like, he becomes, the heel, and that's the new phase of Devin Haney. Absolutely.
I mean, he did that weird dance.
The dream should be the nightmare now. This is the dream turning into the nightmare.
He did that weird dance at the bowling alley, and like he's kind of gloating that the fact that the record got moved. He's now undefeated again, and there's people out there that are just like, dude, you got blaming his dad, and I don't like that he's pillow fisted. He lost to Lomachenko. He's cocky. I don't like his fighting style. That's fine. That's not. But in my mind, that should not supersede the fact that he was on the other end of a guy that came in on PEDs, a guy that was 3 pounds overweight on purpose, a guy that was using IVs in the lead up. That became a thing now that has been surfaced in this story. Chris, even if it was like a small amount of ostarine, which he failed 3 different drug tests. Like there are what's the word I'm looking for? Like when you take PEDs, it has everlasting effects. Like, people that say, oh, well, he couldn't get out of the way of a left hand, or he couldn't get away of a hook. PEDs had nothing to do with Ryan Garcia winning. BS. They did. I think the PEDs had something to do with it. The 3 pounds over had something to do with it. Yes, the left hook was lethal, but those things all factor in. Do you agree with that? Because I saw a lot of those answers from that video I posted.
Yeah, it's funny. People love to use that. There was such a small amount in their system, it couldn't help them at that time. Well, that's not really why you use PEDs. You use them for the training effect, months in advance. Guys who actually use a good drug protocol use it during their training, far out from the fight night. It's not like you're taking the Captain America super drug that turns you into a big Hulk right before you go out there.
Before the fight.
No, that's not the way. Guys, that's not the way these drugs work. These are actually training additions. So as you're training, you take a PED because it helps you recover faster. Now, instead of training once a day and dragging through my second workout, I train 3 times a day. All 3 of them are as good as my first one. Now, if I have the drugs in my system while I'm doing that, while I'm getting that training effect, while my body is changing, while my bones are getting tighter, my getting stronger, my muscles are getting tighter, I'm cutting weight faster, but maintaining good caloric intake. Then when you take this stuff out of your system, that training effect is still there. The muscle maturity is still there. The change in the tendon strength is still there. So the real question is this really the first time that he ever used this stuff? Because if not, if he was using it before, then yes, the training effect will be there. But only thing we know is that he failed right before. In terms of what ostarine would be able to do the night before and day of is literally nothing. But it raises a lot of questions about where that came from. How is it possible that came in at the very last moment multiple times and was not used prior? That's where things get kind of squirrely. But big thing for me is not making the weight. Making the weight is big, especially since I don't think he struggled that bad. It wasn't like how Eric Morales was killing himself to make it against Danny Garcia and said that, for me to be able to even fight, I'm going to have to come in at this weight. He came in being like, I can make it, but I'm going to be weak, and being weak is stupid. This is what he said. So I'm just gonna take this right for where it is. Take that money and pay this fine and just go out there and do what I do. That's a big problem for me.
Yeah, I actually think it's a bad precedent, and I'm not a bad precedent guy because I thought I think it's the fight of the year. I think it was the event of the year. It's a saga of the year. There's nothing that's going to top the build-up, and it was batshit crazy build-up. I loved every second of it. As a content guy, I fed right into it. The week of the fight we had some of the most amount of views we've ever gotten, and that's the business that I'm in. Like, I have to get content. It's literally part of my contract with PPV.com to get content, and Ryan Garcia provided it. But now, as we are a few months removed, and I think everyone is just so tired of this saga, it's just a bad precedent. It's a bad precedent to come in overweight. It's a bad precedent to be on PEDs, of course. Ryan Garcia is one of the top 3 most popular boxers today, if not the most popular boxer, because he's out there doing stand-up comedy. He's out there doing poker. He knows how to keep himself in the news. He knows how to keep himself on Twitter. He knows how to just be there. The guy's very good at people of staying in the public eye. It's just not a good look. It's not a good look. And it took me a while to get to that point, but he's going to have a year out. And he's not going to be able to fight overseas. He's not going to be able to fight in any other state. He's going to have a year where he has to sit and wait. I don't know what's going to happen to him. I don't know what he's going to do. He says, I want to go to the UFC, which is an absolute joke. None of that's going to happen. He's going to sit out and he's going to wait for Devin Haney. I don't know. Like our friend Brian Campbell, who filled in for you last week, brought up Rolly Romero as a potential option for Devin Haney coming back. He's a bona fide name. He's a winnable fight for Haney. I don't think it's going to be Sandor Martin for Devin Haney. I think Haney should just sit out because we're only 2 months removed for that fight. We're talking about fights already. He took an absolute beating. Like we were saying the week, the days after that fight was like, just take it easy, bro. Like take the rest of the year off. Like come back next April, which I think would be smart for him. Like the Sandor Martin fight does nothing for him. Like he already won all the belts. There's nothing. He's a huge name now in boxing. He's one of the top 5 to 10 biggest names in the sport. I would like to say the saga's over, but it's not, because if they fight again, we're looking at one of the biggest rematches in boxing of the last 20 years because of this soap opera that we've been covering for the last 2 months.
Yeah, but the soap opera is basically just Ryan. Ryan is the soap opera, and
well, the expunged loss.
Yeah, and of course, yeah, it stays in the news, but a lot of this is just because of even that the expunged loss is because of Ryan too, because of him, whether he was using or not. This stuff was in his system, and it got there because he was not being diligent about what was around him, or he was flat out cheating. So either way, it's still his fault. This is the soap opera is based around Ryan. Ryan's life is a soap opera. You see what he's doing. He's running around all the time. And I agree with you. It's not a good precedent for these young fighters who look up to guys like Ryan Garcia, and they look up to guys like Devin Haney. And the way they go about things is just very, very different from the old school mentality, the way that I came up with the fighters that we used to grow up following and watching, and wanting to be like, and having as heroes. It's a weird time and world that we live in right now. Social media, I always say, social media breaks brains. Boxing breaks brains, but social media breaks brains in a different way. And it's caused people to act in very, very funny ways to stay in the public eye. It's there's a lot of FOMO out there. There's a lot of look at me out there. And that's just kind of the society that we live in right now.
Social media gives and it takes away. It's positive. It can use it for positive, and it's more negative than positive. But Haney, he was someone that like did it the right way, quote unquote right way. Like was chasing belts and went to 135 and cleared that whole division out, and then now did it. Went to 140, won a title right away. But even he's tweeting about like my next fight it's going to be at any weight that I want. So you can see that even he is beaten and broke down. Even he is like, what the hell? Like, why am I playing by the rules, quote unquote? Like, why am I even bothering? I could just do what Ryan Garcia does and fight at any weight possible and do make my own rules as I go, do PEDs, come in overweight. Everyone will have my back because everyone seems to have Ryan Garcia's back. I was encouraged by a lot of the responses to the video I put out where it's like the boxing world has gone batshit crazy, where we're supporting a drug user, where we're clowning the guy that got beat by a drug user over because of personal vendettas or things we don't like about his dad or this, that. It's just like a crazy saga that, we're going to cover and we're going to talk about, but we can put in the rear view. I did also have a fun experiment, Chris. I want to get your thoughts on this. I put out there, what's one fight where you wish the result was overturned? It doesn't have to be overturned because of cheating. Doesn't have to be overturned because of something bad happening. Just like one fight you watched as a kid or one fight you watched growing up or you hated the result. The result made you sick. And I started with Roy Jones getting Roy Jones getting knocked out by Antonio Tarver comes to mind. Another one for me later on in life was being ringside watching Sergio Martinez on two horribly bad legs get smacked
Cotto.
around by Miguel Cotto, which I love Cotto.
That was a week before I fought Ruslan. That was a week before. We actually shared press days, media days.
Yep. Early June, 2014 at the Garden. I was ringside for that. Like, I love Sergio. Grew a friendship with him and his team through DeBella, and he just got smashed around the ring. Not that like I cared who won. I just wanted him to put on a better performance than that because I knew that Sergio had wanted that Cotto fight for such a long time. Speaking of Cotto, Cotto's first loss to Antonio Margarito, where there was cheating involved. Of course, that's one we want overturned. And that is a fight that a lot of people have been bringing up to me. Like, the reason I don't like Devin Haney is because this dude went to court to try to overturn this. He said, I don't want a rematch. What did Miguel Cotto do when he got beat by a guy with cement in his hands? He ordered a rematch, and he beat his ass. I was like, okay, good point. I see that. But once again, that wasn't proven by Margarito. It was proven by Ryan Garcia. But those are three that come to mind. Obviously, Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas. What are some of yours?
So the Roy Jones one definitely hits home for me. I always say with my friends, if he retired after the John Ruiz fight, best fighter who's ever lived. Best fighter who's ever lived. Ever. Undefeated goes. Not undefeated. Had his one loss with Montel Griffin. Which speaking of getting that back with a vengeance, yikes!
I was at that. I was at the rematch as a 10-year-old.
Yeah. Oh,
10-year-old Dan.
Left hooks.
I was like, man.
He was throwing left hooks from his shoes.
I was like, Dad, Roy's angry because I only knew Roy as like a 10-year-old. I just knew him as like a guy that would fill in every once in a while at HBO. Like, I didn't. That's the first fight I watched live of Roy Jones, and I was like, holy shit. It's like, Dad, Roy was really angry in there that night. He's like, yeah, because he got disqualified in his first.
Yeah, yeah. The first Gotti Ward, I was so heartbroken when Gotti didn't get the win. It was such a close fight. It was such an amazing fight. Obviously, the inception of the trilogy, which became one of the best trilogies of all time. But yeah, I was there watching that fight. First of all, I was sick to my stomach because of how violent the fight was. The back and forth was like, it was really hard to watch. And when we were done, I was like, all right, man, Gotti's gonna pull it out. My brother's like, I don't think he won this one, and he didn't. And that one broke. That snapped my.
Weren't you there?
Snapped me. I was there as in Mohegan Sun. And
I went to Melanie Stafford's Sweet 16 instead.
Melanie Stafford, you're bad.
Bro, I'll never get over that. That's one thing I want reversed in my life. Forget about reversed in a boxing ring. If I can go back in time, I would say, no, I'm not going to your fucking Sweet 16 Melanie Stafford at the VFW. At the VFW in Santa Mauritius, I'm going to go to, my dad was like, hey, you want to come to Gotti Ward? I think it's going to be a good fight. And I'm like, no, all my friends are going to Sweet 16. We're going to grind with a bunch of girls. We're going to drink freaking horrible liquor in the woods. Like, no, I'm going to that.
Dan. Thank God you're an old man now. Thank God you've wizened up. Old man Dan would never ditch a fight for some poorly poured liquor and loose women and loose women. Another fight,
teenage women.
Another fight. De La Hoya Trinidad. That one.
Yes,
I was such a huge De La Hoya fan, and he looked so brilliant for the first 6 rounds of that fight.
Why did he run?
Oh my God! It's just.
You think that keeps him up at night?
Literally, he fought one more round. He just boxed one more round the way he did, and there's no question he won the fight.
All right, so Oscar, obviously, has been through a lot since that night, so much in life, and has everything right now. And do you think he's that he'll wake up in the middle of the night and think about why didn't I just stand in the center for 2 more rounds?
I think he's had countless sleepless nights on so many different fights that he's had, because we all do. That's not
on so many different drugs.
Yeah, that's not anything that is just something that Oscar goes through. That's not. That we all deal with that.
All fighters do it, right? I still think about
to every fight. Yeah, exactly. I think about it for a fight like journeyman that I fought. So yeah, it's that's something that fighters just do.
It's crazy. We had some great replies. Calm McGuigan, who is in the business. Mick Conlon versus Lee Wood. 11-round masterclass. So unfortunate to lose so late on. Bronze West had a great one. That's just like a what if. Mayweather-Castillo won. Imagine a parallel boxing universe where protecting the O was never the goal. The goal was to be the champion. Imagine these kid boxers from today, they're really not kids anymore, wanting to fight each other to be the best. You can be like McGregor and have losses on your record, but still draw crowds and have heavy fan base. The boxing multi-universe exists, and I love to jump the one we just described. That's like a what if. Huge what if.
I love that.
Lost.
I love everything he just said except for the McGregor thing. McGregor is Paulie always says it. He's the punching bag of MMA. The guy hasn't won a fight in 5 years. That's not.
I see. Paulie has worn off on you when it comes to McGregor.
Yeah, well, I mean, come on. Even like McGregor,
I think he means like
Yeah,
I know. Means like McGregor.
A better analogy is Arturo Gatti. Arturo Gatti didn't need to win. He was super popular, made tons of money. I mean, he didn't make money like
Oscar.
Mayweather money, but Oscar, another guy, didn't have to always win, didn't have to even look great. You know, his fight with Felix Sturm was terrible, it's Oscar. So yeah, I don't like the McGregor analogy, but great point. And honestly, he's right. That could have changed the course of history. That parallel universe is one I'd like to live in. Where Floyd loses to Castillo, comes back and beats him in the second fight and third fight, and then goes on to be Floyd. You know, but he has a loss, and now everyone doesn't have to worry about that.
So different.
Focus on that. So
dude, that's a crazy thought experiment because
I love that. I love that he brought that up. That's a tremendous.
Great job, Bronze West. That would change the scope of boxing for 20 years because for the 20 years after that, it was the Mayweather era where there was such an importance on the O. It was such an importance on the best ever. He's still using it today in his post career. He's fighting John Gotti III in their second fight in Mexico, which is just hilarious. But yeah, that's a really good one.
I know John. It's we've been training
called
same gyms.
I called all 10 of John Gotti's amateur MMA fights.
They were
right.
Absolute that's right. For your brother.
Wild scenes. Wild scenes. Some of the craziest scenes I've ever seen were John Gotti MMA fights with his dad, his friends, his family. Just nuts. That's a whole story for another day. Haney versus Loma decision had me jumping up and down. Vargas, Trinidad, Cotto Margarito, first fight, Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas. A lot of Spence to Crawford, which showed me that there's a lot of Errol Spence fans out there, and he took a beating in that fight. If you're a hardcore Errol Spence fan, that's a tough night for you. We're hardcore boxing fans.
That was a tough night that was a tough night for us too, because we're hardcore boxing fans and we wanted a classic, and we just did not get it.
Yeah, but for me, I was just like, holy shit, Crawford is that guy. Where when you watch boxing from a different perspective of I don't care who wins or loses, I just want good events. I want the health of the sport. Chavez Taylor. Dave Brooks says, was heartbroken as a kid. Was heartbroken as a kid. Taylor lost even worse. 2 seconds left on the fight, even worse when I heard he was winning on the cards. Fate dealt a tough hand for poor Meldrick Taylor, and Meldrick Taylor never went on to really recover from that. Chavez did,
damaged him.
And that's another one where you go back in time and does Meldrick Taylor become a huge star? The Chavez probably could bounce back at that time. He was 89-0 or something like that, a crazy record.
But honestly, I think the amount of damage he took in that fight would have affected him either way. I mean, it was literally, even if he makes it to the end,
Taylor
and he
or
gets
Chavez?
the decision. Taylor. He was never the same after that. He was punchy after that. Hey, guys, that's the crazy thing about the sport. It takes one fight. It takes one fight, and you are a different person. Everything has changed. Your balance is gone. Your memory fades. Your speech goes. Your legs don't work the same way. It takes one fight. So that's nuts. That one. Even if he gets by with the win, I still don't think he goes on to be anything else.
A lot of Triple G versus Canelo. A lot of Triple G Canelo. First fight, Tim Bradley beating Provodnikov because he didn't. Says Vale. Mayweather Castillo. Hagler Leonard. A lot of Hagler Leonards.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes sense.
A lot of people don't. Still to this day, I think it's one of the most debated decisions of all time. It's up there with Canelo Triple G 1. I think Hagler Leonard is the fight that, even if it's 30, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, people are just so adamant on what guy they thought won. If it was Hagler or if it was Leonard stealing rounds.
We should do a whole show on that one day, or at least a segment on that fight.
Just go through each one. I
had that fight in particular.
Yeah, I had Ray on the podcast about 2 years ago. It was such a freaking thrill. We did 45 minutes.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I know he was so cool too, and like we went through the whole Hagler Hearns thing. I mean the Hagler fight. I was trying to get him to say like, "Do you think you really won?" And he's like, "Of course I did." So of course I did. He's like, "I gave a boxing lesson in there." Even this is like a couple months after Hagler tragically passed away, and he's like, "I won." He knows it too. I stole those rounds, and that was a boxing lesson. And it's just still to this day one of the most heavily combated or
Ray is
controversial
doggedly competitive. Like that never left him at all. Like
even to
whenever
this
he
day.
talks about that, yeah,
Never.
absolutely, even to this day. But also, so that's how like Frazier and Ali were too. Frazier never let that shit go, and I think that's just that's part of being a fighter. Like you have a snap back, you have that competitiveness, you have that's that belief in the desire, and anything that questions your ability or what you could have done. It hits a nerve on fighters, man. We're competitive by nature. Don't question what we got because we're gonna bring it right back in a different way.
Richard Solomon, we'll end with this one, gave a bunch. Park C. Hunt versus Roy Jones. That was the 1988 Olympics, where Roy Jones outlanded him by a large margin. That was like put CompuBox on the map because they hired CompuBox to do the 1988 Olympics, and Roy outlanded him like 86-23. They made a whole ESPN 30 for 30 on it, titled 86 to 33. Julio Cesar Chavez, Pernell Whitaker, Felix Trinidad, Oscar De La Hoya, which is one of yours, Chris, Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns 2, which no one really ever brings up.
Well, I think Sugar said recently that he thought Tommy won that fight.
Oh, wow. And for him to say that, as
right.
everything we just said, yeah, that's a fun little exercise. As I was sitting by the pool this weekend, thinking, man, like we're going to start overturning losses. Is this going to be a precedent in boxing? Which I don't think it's going to be, but who knows? Like I'm not opposed to it. If you pop for steroids, PEDs, I'm all for making the punishments a little more strict. Like I was expecting 6 months for Ryan. I was expecting 6 months,
same.
and I was expecting nothing with the records. So we're talking about a loss reversed, and we're talking about 1 year, which that's a long time. Like I know fighters fight the top guys usually just fight once a year, but that's not really the case. They fight twice a year. So Ryan loses out on a payday. Like he was supposed to come back in the fall or the winter. He can't come back till April. It's backdated till April 20th. Like I'm sure he wanted to come back because his star it hasn't been any bigger. I'm all for the punishments being stricter. Like I think this is a step we're talking about bad precedents. I think this was a good precedent in terms of 1 year. Which in some sports it's 4 years, Chris. You know that. And then there's also the money violation, and then there's the loss ticket, a win getting removed from your record. So if anything good comes out of this, I like those penalties.
Also, what about in other sports, like in baseball, for example, where you can't get in the Hall of Fame if you have failed,
right.
a drug test, and I think that would weigh on fighters a lot, especially top guys who have that ability to vie for a spot in the Hall of Fame. You start pulling guys out for that. Ugh, man, that's between the fines, damaging your legacy, but also like keeping you out of the Hall of Fame, keeping you out of the Hall is a big deal.
Yeah, there's just so much money. Like I don't think a lot of the players that cheated in baseball were like, "Fuck it, I'm about to get that next contract." Where in boxing, like it's like Ryan said, Ryan made a business decision.
It's similar in boxing too, though, man. These guys,
Ryan made a business decision.
If you can pull out another 2-3 years at top level, and when your earning potential is at its highest, you're looking at $5, $10, $15 million, for some of these fighters.
I know. I'm sure you thought about it too. I'm like, you would have been a prime candidate to do I always think about this in the baseball level of things. Like, who are prime candidates to do PEDs? It's anyone in like 33 or up that had success, that got a big fight or a big contract in baseball. Has a name. Like, I think of like one name comes to mind is like former Yankee first baseman Mark Teixeira. Got a huge contract. And then like was clearly on the decline and never did PEDs. If the guy did PEDs in like 2012 when his decline started for the Yankees, he would have played maybe 6-7 more years, 30 home runs, 100 RBIs. We're talking about Hall of Fame Mark Teixeira, but we're not. We're talking about a what-if story. There's so many of those names. I'm sure you would have probably thought about it too. I mean, it's
one of the reasons I retired. It's one of the reasons I retired. I was like, I even said that in my post. I'm like, I refuse to use PEDs. even though I know it would get me a couple years out of me and a lot of money. But listen, that's not what my character is made of. So
Hell
can't
yeah.
do it. And a lot of fighters, should go that other way or have, allegedly. And guys make a lot of money in those last couple of years, man. There's a reason guys fight late in their lives, even though it's so dangerous for them, for their health and their future. It's because the money's big.
You notice me flexing right now?
Yeah, the purple kind of kills the muscle.
This is a nice.
It's a very nice
workout
shirt.
I'm about to go hit the gym.
I can't see the cuts through it though.
Bro, I'm getting like pretty big. I'm not gonna lie. I'm only on like 7 weeks. Got the creatine in my veins. It makes me shit my pants, but it's worth it. It works.
For the record, hey listeners, this guy shits his pants for everything. So it's
I've been
not
shitting
the
my
creatine.
pants numerous times. Creatine works, bro. Talk about a wonder drug.
Yeah, it does.
Holy
it's good
shit!
For your brain. It's good for your brain. It's good for your muscles. It's good for athletic performance. It's good for being when you're hungover. It's good for when you're sleep deprived. More and more. I mean, it is the most studied ergogenic aid on the market in history, and it is the shit. Everybody should be on it.
Yeah, I love it. All right, let's go into what we saw this past weekend. Rafael Espinoza. Probably the best fighter and most exciting fighter that you don't know about because he had that huge win over Robesi Ramirez. Pretty much disappeared after that. He doesn't really get a lot of pub, but he is virtually unbeatable, I think, right now at featherweight. He stops Chirinos in the 4th round, his first defense of that title. So many exciting fights for him right now at featherweight. He can obviously the rematch with Robesi is what they're building towards. He'll be fighting on the card that you're calling against Robson Conceição. I expect Robesi to win that, although I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park. But they're obviously building towards an Espinoza Ramirez rematch. There's a unification with Luis Alberto Lopez, who is signed to Top Rank, which I think is just an absolute war. There's a hilarious visual fight with Nick Ball. We're talking 5'2" versus 6'2". I need to see that just for the sheer physics of it. And then, of course, Espinoza's like talking about Inoue because it's the same thing with Canelo. If you're at 122 right now or 126, Inoue is in your scope. You have to bring up Naoya Inoue's name, or you're just not wise. So there's a lot of great fights for Rafael Espinoza, and I think he's just a great personality. He was singing after the fight. He has a fan-friendly style. He's must-watch TV. Put him in the must-watch section of boxing right now.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, his physique, his physical dimensions are incredible. 6'1", 126 pounds, but he also has power. And he's got an engine. He's got heart. He's got a chin. He got dropped and hurt several times in that Robesi Ramirez fight. Injured his ankle on the way down. Gets up and just roars back, and amazing show of heart and skill and will. And then finally, this last weekend, we got to see what he was doing in there. His ability to throw short punches on the inside with power. That first, or I don't know if it was the first knockdown, but it was a short left hook in between a wide shot from his opponent, and just clipped him and put him down. The guy didn't see it at all. Got up like, what the hell was that? This tall guy's not supposed to be able to punch this short with power, but he can. Very, very impressive outing last week. I'm looking forward to seeing him with all of those guys, just like you mentioned. I think some really great matchups at featherweight right now. I think the rematch with Robesi makes a ton of sense. I know that's, like you said, that's a fight that Top Rank, I'm sure, is angling for. I'm sure Ramirez is angling for it. The first fight was awesome, so why not? But man, I can't say any more good things about this kid. I really enjoy watching him fight.
Yeah, I would like to see ESPN, put some more marketing dollars behind him. I just think like the bigger the fights get, the more we'll hear from him because this was his first defense. He took a long time off in between the Ramirez fight and this one.
It wasn't that long. It was only, I'm looking at it right now, 6 months.
Ramirez, like November?
6 months. It was in December, early December. But also, remember, he injured his foot. He injured his foot when he went down. So,
got it. Chris, the police are coming for you, bro.
No, not me, bro. I'm
they know there's
under wraps.
There's an American on the loose. There's an American running through the streets. I think the bigger the fights get, the bigger we'll hear from him. And the biggest fight right now at featherweight for him, I think, is the unification with Lopez, which I think Top Rank can make. My guess is Top Rank puts him in there in the next in the fall or winter with Ramirez, who's fighting next weekend. So the schedules line up perfectly. And then there's the Luis Alberto fight, Lopez, if he keeps winning. I don't think he'll fight Nick Ball because of the politics, but who knows? Maybe Saudi gets involved. And then Inoue,
Well, if they
126
do a
at that
5-on-5, they do a 5-on-5. If that ends up ever happening with Top Rank and any of the other guys, we could see some of those crossover fights. But you're right; they're going to keep it in house as usual if they can.
especially when you have two viable fights in house, like Ramirez and Lopez are perfect.
Excellent
and
fights.
That's
Excellent fights.
just right. ESPN main events, put them in freaking Arizona. There's a big Mexican fan base, which Top Rank has been doing a great job of. Boom, you got yourself a fall winter ESPN 10 p.m. start. Perfect. That was this past weekend. It was not a busy weekend in boxing. There were some fights overseas that I followed very loosely as I floated in my parents' pool. But this upcoming weekend, I mean, you're just going to be flipping back and forth. Or you can watch both. You can have ESPN on your TV, and then you can have DAZN on your phone or computer. That's what I'll do. I'm probably going to go live at some point and watch both. And I haven't done that in a while. Going to do that this weekend. Oh, Jack Catterall Regis Prograis is set for August 24th. That fight doesn't really I don't know what it is, but I think Jack Catterall is an awesome dude. His fighting style just doesn't. It's not my favorite fighting style, but I respect his. Like Regis, I think got I hate to use this word, exposed big time in the Haney fight. Like it's a fine fight. Like I'll watch it, but I'm not I don't think either guy is going to be a champion at 140.
Yeah, Jack, like you said, great guy, good fighter, talented, and I'm happy to see that him getting some shine because of that first Taylor fight and how it went down. Getting the revenge, getting those fights afterwards, getting the bag too. He's making some money, which is nice. But he just doesn't move the needle. He's just not that kind of guy. He's not super exciting in terms of his style, in terms of personality, in terms of his look, anything. It doesn't move the needle in those certain ways. And Regis, I think it's just long in the tooth. He's kind of always had problems with boxers. So he's got another boxer in front of him. Jack doesn't take risks. He's going to sit there and he's going to box, but he's also going to make it ugly on the inside. He's going to tie you up. You're both probably going to trip and fall over each other at some point. Doesn't make for great fights. I don't expect a great one here either. It just basically comes down to, can Regis go back to the well one more time and pull out a big win? Because that would be a really big win for him at this point of his career. But, I mean, Catterall's got a lot of momentum behind him, and he's very confident. So, tough fight.
Make or break for Prograis.
Yeah.
No one's going to forget how bad he looked.
Yeah, more than likely break.
Yeah.
I think that's a really tough
that's
fight
August 24th. Add that to the schedule. I'm about to interview later today Jorge Masvidal. He's fighting boxing. Light heavyweight, 10 rounds, which I was kind of surprised by. I thought it would be 8. Nate Diaz. I have to check that out. 10 threes, 10 twos wouldn't surprise me. I think it's a professional fight. It's not an exhibition. He's fighting Nate Diaz July 6th. You can watch that on ppv.com. I'm interested in Masvidal. I think he's he respects boxing. I think he loves boxing. I want to get his thoughts on what he thinks about the sport currently. What he thinks about this league that could potentially happen. What he thinks about the business side of things, because it's very clear he's fighting Nate Diaz because he could make some dollars here. I don't know what type of business it's going to do. I'm interested in talking to what's his nickname? He's got a crazy nickname, but South Florida guy. I should probably know.
Dude, I remember watching him on street fight YouTube videos 20 years ago, in Miami, just scrapping with guys way bigger than him with his ponytail. Street legend. I think that might be something's like that. Street Jesus or something like that.
There's a Jesus in there.
Yeah, it's like Street Jesus or something like that.
Hey, they asked me.
Good.
Game Bread is his one nickname.
Right.
Oh, this is gonna piss me. Street Jesus.
Street Jesus. I see. I told you. Street Jesus. What a name. Seems like a super cool guy. And I love guys who respect the sport, and he does respect boxing. It seems like he's trying to do the right thing, and any way that a fighter can in terms of getting into promotion. But in terms of that fight, I don't know how much interest there's going to be in that. They've already fought in the cage, and Masvidal I think stopped him, which is hard to do. Nate Diaz doesn't get stopped much, but
that was what Masvidal was on a crazy run though.
Yeah. But Nate Diaz, man, he went 10 with Jake, right? He went 10 with Jake
Took
Paul.
Jake's. What do you think about Jake Paul, Mike Perry?
Well, I mean, listen, these kind of fights, especially if they're going to pull him in, like they know the outcome. They already sparred. They know they got Mike's number. Mike's not a boxer. Mike is probably the best bare knuckle fighter in the world. Like he is made
pound
for
for pound.
shit.
He's pound for pound
the best bare knuckle fighter in the world. He is made for that shit. He gets his nose twisted on backwards. It gets cut. Doesn't matter. He knocks everybody out. He's super fun to watch. Great personality. So the buildup will be fun. But you put gloves on and you're used to fighting with no gloves. Big difference. And I think
it's a big difference.
Way, totally different.
But I will say this. I will say this about Perry. He's one of the youngest opponents for Jake. He's 32 years old, 31, 32 years old. Even though
he's only 32. Oh my god!
Yeah, bro. He got chewed up and spit out by the UFC.
Yeah, he looks
but
like he's 50.
I think he's gonna he's just gonna be a live body in there. Like I think it's one of the more intriguing opponents that they could have found. Obviously, he was supposed to fight Mike Tyson, and I think it's wise for them to just come up with another fight. Promotion's going to be absolute batshit crazy, and I think there's going to be some moments in the fight. There's going to be some moments in the fight where Jake is going to be a little overwhelmed because Perry, he probably lacks a little bit of the fundamentals of pure boxing, like bare knuckle boxing and regular boxing are two different sports. But with that being said, just like the animalistic nature of Perry, the fact that he's just going to come forward will probably play into Jake's hands. But there will be some moments early on in that fight where, wow, all right, Jake's in there with a live body. He's in there with a guy that has no fear. He's in there with a guy that could put together a combination. So from that standpoint, I'm interested in seeing how Jake handles it. Just a fun fight. Like I said this with Brian Campbell. It's just like a fun little summer blockbuster fight. It's going to do good business. It's going to be a lot of build-up. Like, the boxing schedule is loaded, so I always said there's room for everything. There's room for these types of fights. There's room for all sorts of fights. Like we're getting Bam versus Strada. We're getting all these big fights in every weight class. All right, let's have Jake Paul versus Mike Perry, and let's just pop it on the Zone pay-per-view, payperview.com, and have and just watch and enjoy it.
Dan, to be completely honest, I actually prefer this fight than Mike Tyson. I didn't care for that setup at all. I didn't care for that fight. I think he's
what's happening in November.
We'll see. If he gets there. Speaking of Peds, I hope they are juicing Mike to the gills over the next 6 months because they turn back the hands of time. And not because I want him. Not because I want him to win, mind you. So he doesn't get hurt. He's an old man. I know the aura of Mike Tyson is what it is, but I actually prefer this fight better because, like you said, Mike, he's got balls and he's a grinder. So it's going to be will and balls versus what Jake brings to the table.
Ball grinder, Mike Perry.
Jake is a much bigger guy too. Like he does not fight anyone near his size.
I think Perry's his bare knuckle fights have been at 185, and Jake is coming down from
230 something,
220. When I saw him at the press conference, he was beefy.
He was trying to get up to 240. He said when he was going to fight Mike.
That would have been interesting to see how his speed, because I think he's pretty quick in there, Jake. Like when I first
he's athletic.
Watching him. Yeah, when I first started watching him, he was, so much smaller. Like when he made his debut, it's nuts. All right, good show. Enjoy the last leg of your Euro trip. Enjoy your travels back to the U.S. for Pro Box on Friday night, for ESPN on Saturday night. We'll be back with another episode. We'll be back with another episode later in the week where we will dive deep into Bam versus Strada. We'll give our predictions. Teofimo Claggett. Robesi Ramirez. There's a slew of fights. We'll give our betting odds and all that good stuff. So protect yourselves at all times. Keep your hands up at all times. If you see Chris on the streets of Europe, punch him in the gut. Goodbye.
Don't do that. Say what's up.